Okay, so we are live. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here and chatting about the Ethereum Commons, hashtag ETH Commons. And if some other people show up, they do. And if not, that's okay too. At a high level, what we're going to do is, so it's going to be, we're time boxed for an hour. So we have 53 minutes and we're going to do quick little intros from everybody. I'll give a high level overview on ETH Commons stuff. And then we'll essentially do this thing where we prioritize our set, where we essentially, it's called lean coffee, where we come together, produce a bunch of ideas for what we want to talk about, and then prioritize those ideas and talk about them. Does that all sound good? Let's do it. So I'm going to give a quick little intro on myself, and then we'll go to the next person, take maybe 30 seconds. So my name is Reese, and I'll just talk about what I do normally and why I'm here on the call and why I'm interested in ETH Commons. Normally, beyond ETH Commons, I have a podcast called Creating a Humanist Blockchain Future, and I also am writing a book soon, so that's fun. And I'm connected to ETH Commons because I think it is a fun meme as a way to spread good vibes in the Ethereum community. Yalda.
Yeah, my name is Yalda, and I'm a co-founder of Space Cooperative that has created Space Decentral, which is a DAO for taking us to space and tying that towards improving Earth as well. I also am a collaborator on Giveth and Nesty. Just recently won an Aragon Nest grant, so I feel like I'm cross-pollinating all over. So this ETH Commons things makes a lot of sense to me.
Great. Thank you for the intro. Let's go to Nathan next.
Yeah, I'm Nathan Waters. Been involved in the kind of crypto scene for a long time. I started the Sydney Ethereum meetup in 2014. I've also got a project called Peerism, which is about kind of tokenizing skill sets in a way to kind of transition us to a post-capitalist future. And recently joined Consensus on the community team. So I'm basically now being paid to help grow the whole Ethereum crypto community, which is fun. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Nathan. Let's go to Michael.
Yeah, I'm Michael Lustig. I'm actually just an Android developer, but I'm exploring the crypto space and trying to brainstorm some ideas that I can create in the space and trying to find like-minded people. Kind of doing a quasi podcast a little bit with Nathan. We're trying to start something up kind of similar to his older projects, Futah. Just looking to really kind of solve the problems that are obviously apparent but not being worked on in any kind of major way, similar to all you guys. So happy to be here.
Boom. That's great. Thank you, Michael. And just as a note, if you're not, I'm hearing a little bit of echo, so if you're not currently speaking, if you want to mute, that would be good. Sure. But we're about to go to Daryl. Daryl, do you want to give us an intro?
Hi, I'm Daryl Dwayne in Washington, D.C. I've been in the space since 2010 and run the meetup group here in D.C. Been very interested lately in decentralization and in identity, blockchain and identity, and how that can change things. And I want that so that we can create a crypto-based universal basic income system that handles Sybil attacks. So I'm very interested in self-sovereign identity.
Thank you. Yes, that is great. UBI, blockchain-based UBI. Susan is the final person, and Susan is actually is our new ETH Commons co-steward. So she's super aligned with us in various ways, and I'll have her give a quick intro on herself as well. So Susan, do you just want to say who you are and why you're excited about ETH Commons stuff? Susan, I'm not sure if we can hear you. We definitely cannot. We'll come back to Susan. James, do you want to give us an intro on you and what you do and why you're excited about or why you're interested in ETH Commons?
Sure. I'm James Waugh, everybody, and working on a project called Bidio, which utilizes the multi-dimensional view token protocol, and interested in ETH Commons because of the Creative Commons primarily, but also have been following your work, Reese, for a while and really appreciate everything you do.
Cool. Yeah, I just was at the Creative Commons Summit this last weekend or the weekend before that, and it was trying to learn from those people about this kind of stuff in the early internet days and how we can cross apply that to blockchain world. Should be good. So what we're gonna do now, thank you all for the quick intros. We're gonna do, so I'm gonna post in the thread, in the Google Hangout thread. So if you look on the top left corner, there's a chat button. If you click that chat button to the right, there should be this Trello invite link. You'll click that, and then you'll see a Trello board. And so, woohoo, people are getting on it. Michael's there. So everybody should try to join this little board, and I'll wait a sec until more people are on here. So you should go to the chat, and then after you click on the chat, then you should click on that Trello invite link. Nice work, everybody. So let's do, by the way, Susan, can you speak now? Can we hear you? No, we cannot. Okay. So what we're going to do, it looks like, by the way, Daryl and James, you still need to get on the board on the right side there. Nice work, James. So what we're going to do is we're going to add, there's this agenda 5118. So you're just going to add, you're going to type some random cards here for things that you want to talk about, questions that you have, things you're interested by, and then we will prioritize them by voting on them in a second. So right now, let's have each of us take about 2 or 3 minutes to write cards that you on things that you'd like to try about. Okay, go. And I need you to and do you have your plate number? Keep on adding those cards there.
It's the first time that I use it.
Oh,
hey, Reese, quick question. Quick question. So through your reading, I noticed you use the double angle brackets to kind of, intersperse throughout some of your writings. Can you explain what exactly that symbol means to you so I can better understand it?
We can do that, but that must be pretty much it just means a system loop tech society. Are you talking about this thing?
Yeah.
It means
just a loop. Okay, cool. That's what I thought. I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like we got some good questions here. If you're typing a question, finish that question up. And what we're going to do now is everybody. So there's about 12 or so cards in here. We're going to give everybody, you can have 3 to 6 votes, or really as many cards you want to talk about. And so you're just going to click V on a card to vote on it. And so right now, let's do that voting, and then we'll prioritize the cards with the most votes. Okay. Nathan, you just archived a card on accident. I'm sending it back. It's cool.
What did I do?
You clicked C instead of V. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so they're right next to each other.
I know. Yeah, it's kind of sad. Okay. So, we'll vote on some final cards if you haven't yet.
So the permit will give you the right to park on our block, which is anywhere from here to
oh, geez. Okay. So let us prioritize some things.
And then the back street is collected. Avoid if there's a fire.
Okay.
Avoid if there's
So let's start with this. So what we do now is I'm going to essentially we're going to try to go through these cards. I'm going to essentially put a 4-minute timer for each card. We're going to chat about it, and then we're going to chat about it for a bit. And then after that 4 minutes is up, then we say, hey, how much more time would we like to spend on this card? So that's pretty much the situation. And before, yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And then we'll end probably 5 minutes early, so we can do a quick little retrospective at the end. So starting with this top card here, this was my card, because the funny thing with all this stuff is, like, I've been like pushing this hashtag ETHCommons stuff for a while. Like, Neil's part of it. Like, we just gave Susan this grant, but really, what's happening, so I would love to know from you all, what value, how can I be helpful for you? What value are you looking to get out of ETHCommons? That's my question, so anybody can take this.
Kitchen also, we have two, one at the very top, one is your floor, there's one downstairs. If you use, you clean after.
Is anybody looking for any value?
Maybe you could give us an example of your answer.
Well, I come at this from a very customer discovery perspective. So at my old job, I did a lot of customer discovery, kind of empathizing with users kind of thing. So that's what I do in the Ethereum ecosystem, is I essentially just talk with people. After talking with them, I understand what their dreams are, what their pains are. And then I say, okay, so if I did this, would you pay me money for it? And they say, yeah. And then I do it. So that's the process that I take. And then the value that I've done with that was, the value that, and I don't know, so that's like a process level view on it. I don't know if there's specific value. The reason why I'm asking this, I guess, is like, I do some of these cross-project calls within, like, the crypto economic primitives curation markets world, sometimes within the governance world, sometimes in this community of communities thing. And I guess that there is, like, maybe the question here is, like, if you all wanted to, like, you're all on this call, you're spending your time here, what, if you're like, okay, if Reese could do X, Y, or Z, or if some of the other people in this call could do X, Y, or Z, what could they do that would make me be like, yeah, that should be done? That would provide me value, or that would provide the ecosystem value?
I can just talk about why I feel like something like ETHCommons is important. Just like having a real decentralized entity where anyone can just start to collaborate and get involved and figure out how we can, like, solve these problems together. You don't have to belong to some corporation to do it. It can be a lot of different corporations and individuals, and that's just, like, really important to ensure that everything, it meets the end goal of why we're all interested in crypto and blockchain. So I think something like, ETHCommons is something that the ecosystem really needs. Just like I like the concept of a hashtag, because that shows really the decentralized nature of it. So
cool, that's helpful. Do others have thoughts on? Because I could go deeper on that, but do others have thoughts on things like that?
Well, I always thought about your writing, the cooperative mentality is what I'm looking forward to seeing more of in the space and beyond. So I think in technology right now, everyone's excited about blockchain, and we're just figuring out how to coordinate around the shared goals, right? So ETHCommons is kind of the base layer, promoting open source, public infrastructure and utilities. I see it as something that is really foundational to the new paradigm. So I'm really excited to be involved and help however I can.
Interesting. So I think that there's so Yalda, I really agree with you in terms of that's the idea here, is like, hey, things like consensus are very helpful. Things like ECF are helpful. Things like Aragon Nest are helpful in terms of, they have a very similar mindset towards all this stuff, but it's also helpful to just have a pure permissionless thing where you can put the tag on whatever, and the tag can be placed on you, and anybody can join the call. You know, stuff like that. I think is powerful. So I think that's kind of where ETH, and like you say, the hashtag is a key part to that. So I think it's weird when you say like, hey, what value do I provide? And usually you're like, oh, what value does my water bottle provide? It's like, well, it's a thing that holds water. That's why I purchased it, you know? While ETH Commons is more like, oh, it's a hashtag that provides permissionless access to doing good in the Ethereum ecosystem or something like that. Okay. And I think the other piece with what you said there, James, was, this cooperative mentality. And I think, I mean, using your words there about cooperating to shared outcomes and co-evolving to shared outcomes, those are the memes that we're trying to spread here. So that's alignment too. Does anybody have other questions or other thoughts on the value that ETH Commons can provide?
So Reese, real quick, I had that Medium comment that you got into the agenda, trying to summarize my understanding after reading a couple of your articles. And so I just wanted to make sure I was starting from the same common understanding as everybody else before I kind of offered any ideas there. Would you say that's accurate?
Let's go to that actually right now. So we're just about the 4-minute mark. Okay. I think it might be Dwayne is I'm hearing some more. I'm sorry to mute. So yeah, let's actually go to this card that and I'm just gonna prioritize it here. So this was a comment that Michael put at the end of this recent what the hell actually is ETH Commons thing, and he said, hey, at this point, if I may attempt to summarize my understanding of exactly what ETH Commons is, it's a collective effort between altruistic individuals centered around the blockchain space attempting to fill the gaps between disparate but very similar efforts. Would you say that's accurate or no? I think that is pretty accurate. I would add maybe a couple things to it. One, I would say that I would reemphasize the why, that ETH Commons is just part of the macro phase shift why, that ETH Commons is an end to a means, or a means to an end rather. I would also probably add the two values there, or I mean the value, like things around permissionlessness and transparency, and then maybe around and this is kind of here, this like weird collective effort to like the decentralized nature of it. So I think yes, your understanding is pretty in alignment with what I'm personally thinking.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, good to know that. So I guess so it's a means to an end. What exactly would you say the number one goal is? Obviously promoting things that are good. But I've noticed through just a limited research that even though things are decentralized, we obviously need the organization there. I've talked with Nathan a little bit about how through consensus, it's kind of hard to get anything done at scale in a decentralized way. So where do you find the balance between permissionlessness and transparency, which is obviously very important, and that of the ability to divvy up tasks and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you can think about you can see something like ETH Commons as the extreme example of that, where it's like, hey, we have a hashtag. And it's like, well, what actually got done? Nothing.
Okay.
So I think that so let's say that balance. I think that balance much more exists within something like consensus within all the decentralized things. But with something like ETH Commons, I think it's kind of filling a different role rather, which is actually, I think a lot of people, I would say it's filling more the role of like BUIDL or something like that, in the sense that, and that's the hashtag BUIDL. And what I mean by that is ETH Commons is really, I think it's an indicator. I think it's and I'm just kind of vocal processing here, but I think it's an indicator that you have some of the shared values and mindset and deep why that kind of embody this thing. So I think it's less about how we can work together and stuff like that. I think there's part of that, but it's more like, hey, if we're trying to achieve this feature, then we need to have something like some permissionless thing. And then once you have that mindset, then you can start attaching it to various things.
Cool. Thanks for the explanation.
By the way, Susan, does your mic work? Let's see. You need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Do you want to give? Hello. You succeeded with perseverance. Do you want to give a quick intro on you and why you're excited? Susan's new co-steward, so there's a grant for her for $2,400 to do ETH Commons stuff. So she's the one who's really going to be helped most by this. It's like the clarity will be here. But so before we go into that, so Susan, can you just tell us a little bit of why you're excited by ETH Commons stuff?
Absolutely. So my background has been in a very traditional like art and design space, but really what that has focused on is community and bringing people together to kind of create a new space or a new measure. And so when I fell into and learned more about like blockchain and Ethereum, that really just bowled me over. And I was like, I want to be in this space. I want to get more involved. I want to do all those things and take all that previous knowledge or previous experience and really move it into this new area. So, but one thing I wanted to say was that like even Reese and I were kind of talking about the how and the why and the who does what and whatever, and really starting from that meme space and really kind of looking at the different efforts of what you want to get involved with and having that decentralized power, if you will, just to say, these are the efforts that I want to get involved in, and these are the things that I really want to move forward. So.
Well, thank you, Susan, and we'll share when Susan does when we do the official announcement or whatever. We'll share some of Susan's application, which was really pretty sweet. So more on that, and I think so. Let's come back to the point. So thank you for the intro, Susan. This question we were talking about what it does. And I think Nathan, were you going to say something? You unmuted for a bit. Were you going to say something on that point?
Yeah. Just a few thoughts around like so something I've really noticed in the whole scene since the beginning, and even more so now, is that as my point I put in the Trello, like all these silos that are forming, and so like I think people who grasp the idea of what decentralization means, I think that's an amazing kind of like shared purpose, because it's a generic enough phrase that has enough of a scope. That it's like everyone can agree with that decentralization is good, and we all have different ideas on what that means to get there. But I think it's definitely like an amazing kind of unifying shared purpose, and that's why like I love everything you do, Reese, especially with ETH Commons and this whole concept. I think specifically on the idea of like what I'd love to see in the community is the whole ecosystem is people kind of like collaborating, but not having to like physically get together in a room and collaborate, like an economic forcing function that forces collaboration. Because I see it so often, like you've got the issue of platform-centric silos. So you've got obviously like you've got the interoperability problem. The Neo platform doesn't work with Ethereum, doesn't work with EOS when they build their thing. Like there are all these silos. That's bad. But then even in say just Ethereum itself, you've got project silos. So you've got like I've chatted to Simon De La Riviere about this before. Like you've got Ujo doing decentralized music, but you've also got Opus doing decentralized music, and there's probably a dozen others that are all trying to solve the exact same problem. But they're going about it, and I see this so often, they're going about it in a very capitalist type mentality, startup scene type mentality, where it's like, capture, control, and monopolize and get your piece of the pie. And you've got these projects working towards the same end goal, having the same internal discussions, building the same codes, struggling with the same problems, and not cooperating. And even if they do try to cooperate, if they actually, actively try and meet up every month, which apparently Ujo did try to do at some stage with the other groups, that it falls apart because you've got the natural human politics, and trying to get people to come together in these different groups is difficult. And anytime you kind of put a brand on something or a name on something, you almost like immediately put a circle around it, and it becomes this competitive force. So I've been thinking around this concept of like Legorization or Project Lego or some type of Lego type idea, where like, well, what if we built everything in very modular processes? So maybe you've got Ujo here and you've got Opus here, but maybe together, maybe Ujo is comprised of say 5,000 Lego bricks, and these might be single function smart contracts or single design components. and maybe Opus is made of like 4,000 Lego bricks, but between them, they're both sharing 3,000 of these Lego bricks. And so then the way they would increment and build upon what they're working towards, they build very incrementally building open source modules that anyone can use. And maybe the modules have like an economic incentive where every time they're used, the creator gets a micro fee. And so in this kind of abstract model, like the end game is that you have collaboration without people actually having to physically come together and collaborate. And you dissolve the whole zero-sum game issue, because in the end, there's going to be one big protocol, one big network that, dominates the decentralized music platform space. But if that big platform is comprised of, say, 1 million of these Lego bricks that are being created by dozens or hundreds of projects and thousands of creators, then everyone wins. It's not a winner takes all type issue. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about, and particularly like getting the community to realign around shared purposes rather than platforms, and realign around collaborating. But yeah, collaboration through an economic forcing function rather than hey, let's get a whole bunch of nice monkeys together in a room and get them to collaborate. It doesn't work. That's just my random rant. Hopefully there's something of value in there.
Yeah, I have some stuff on top of mine, but do you have thoughts on what Nathan said there about both the economic forcing function and the kind of co-evolution mindset?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And there's a hard limit on how well a group of people can cooperate after a given group size. And so after that, we almost have to introduce the economy of it. And I think that's brilliant in saying, that I think there needs to be a perpetual proportionate compensation for those Lego bricks, as he described them, for open source code. And if we can develop some kind of protocol for that, I think the space also needs to move more towards protocols and less towards this music sharing app versus that music sharing app. Because at the end of the day, it's all music. I mean, it doesn't need to be that different. You can skin it differently and you can brand things differently, but at the end of the day, you're sharing the same type of data. So if we get that protocol right, then I think that cooperation begins to become easier and easier. And as the ecosystem of open source perpetually compensated developers grows, so too does the competition within that developer group to improve the source code itself and the projects themselves.
Yeah, I feel like on the point of, having someone in the commons, and the fact that Ujo and Opus were trying to do stuff together and then eventually it broke up, that makes so much sense, because that's what everybody, if you're in a certain institution, that's what you're optimized for, is your various things within that institution. And so you almost need someone, and this is the idea behind ETH Commons, is specifically placing someone in the commons such that they don't have, their whole goal is just to do random common stuff. And purely because that's their incentive structure, then that means that those kind of cross-project collaborations can actually sustain themselves over time and don't kind of naturally dissolve. I think it's kind of like a balancing act between, you want to have some of the like, yo, I'm in a silo, and you also want to have some people being like, no, let's like come together, and like you're both trying to do the exact same thing, and you're like aligned on like 97% of your stuff. So I think that's one thing on top of my mind, is actually the like actual cross-project facilitation piece, and having someone in the commons who's incentivized for that. And then the other piece is, what was I going to say? I think that I think that we've just been talking about a lot, which I think is just, and this is something we can come back to in a bit, is the power of the certain like memes or the other hashtags that are part of, and actually let's, I'm going to do a little bit YOLO here. And we're just going to talk about that for a second. So the memes that I see as being part of this, and by meme I mean it as a hashtag that has some kind of meaning behind it. Dank memes, exactly. So what are the memes? So for me, I see the memes that are in ETH Commons as hashtag ETH Commons, the hashtag crypto pledge, which is the mindset of non-accumulation, where you say, hey, I already have enough, I don't need more, and if I get a lot, then I can give some back to the people. So hashtag crypto pledge, and then the final big one is so crypto pledge, and then there's also, and I'm typing in these on the side, and then the other one is the hashtag co-evolving to shared outcomes. I think the other one where you say, hey, we both have the same goals here, and we could exist in a win-lose environment, but instead let's exist in a win-win environment and, do some kind of co-opetition style thing. So do others have thoughts on, let's take a couple minutes to just see, do others have thoughts on what other memes are part of ETH Commons, or what they would want to be part of ETH Commons? Or push back on those memes?
I like those a lot, and I tend to use shared goals instead of shared outcomes because it's a little more intentional. But one thing I'd like to see added is something around creativity, because I feel like the participants adding value and contributing to a network should be incentivized and rewarded, and that's a lot of what ETH Commons aims to do is, bring people into the open source collaborative and collective, initiative.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And maybe instead of like co-evolving is kind of like, it's again similar to shared outcomes, where it's kind of thinking of it from a third person perspective. Well, really what you're doing is you're creating to shared goals, so I like something like that. Do others have thoughts on memes that they would like to see as part of ETH Commons?
I wonder about the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition and how that interfaces with this, if at all.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition is essentially an initiative, a coalition spun up inside Consensus. And it is, they're primarily, I'm not sure the exact work that they do, but they run an incubator, they run a conference, and they do kind of like a mentor for some of their the incubator stuff. And they also give, they bring people in, projects that are looking to do blockchain for good stuff. And then I think that they work with them to some extent in that. And I'm not sure, Nathan, if you know more about this. But so I think that in theory, Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition is a sub-coalition within Consensus, and ETH Commons co-evolves with it to some extent, in that we have similar-ish goals, and that we want to do blockchain for good. I would say theirs is more direct, like classic NGO blockchain for good kind of stuff, and ETH Commons is more like weird memes to shift to game B stuff. Yeah.
Although I think so I actually started up the Blockchain for Social Impact meetup in Sydney about a month ago. And that was, so of all the crypto meetups I've ever seen in Sydney, that was a massive turnout. We had like 330 RSVPs, and it was like the most diverse meetup we've ever had. So in terms of getting more women involved in the whole scene and a more diverse range of people, like that angle is very, very good. Blockchain for Social Impact. It gets the right diversity and the right crowd.
Yep. I've also seen that. That would be, honestly, for me, another one of the memes that might honestly be part of ETH Commons to me, is this, I guess, like, there's something about the decentralization piece of it, and both the decentralization of like the tech, but also the decentralization of like who is saying stuff. And this gets to identity and gets to identity politics, it gets to gender and crypto and all those kinds of things. But I think that if there was another meme, that would be one that I would be tempted to be part of it as well, which is some kind of like thinking about who is doing stuff. Yeah, the identity piece there, I think it would be powerful. And actually, I'm just going to go to one other one right now, which is that the one that I want to do in the future is what we're doing. So a lot of people are building, and they're building great stuff, and that's the biddle. But ETH Commons is more about the deep why level. And so I think that some of these ones, like pushing things like why biddle, or like, and making sure that people are going to that why level. A lot of us are already there for various reasons, but I think that if we could get more people to think in that way, then that could be good. Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that.
Yeah, so Reese, on that, if I may. So it's important, I think, to think about the way that we talk about post-capitalism and late-stage capitalism and things like this, but how capitalism has implanted into our minds the fact that we need to quickly iterate and just build and build and build and build, and it seems like we don't think about the implications of what we build as much as we should. And so thinking about those things and taking the time to discuss the philosophy and the implications that an idea will have in the long term, and really long-term humanistic goals that we should share, something around that maybe. But I think you just touched on that, so I wanted to emphasize.
I like long term. As a long term, I think is part of this. I try not to build a Skynet exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that long term is another piece here. Okay, so that was helpful. Let's switch back to the board and do these other two. We're gonna do maybe these top 3 ones, and then we'll transition into a final piece here. So Yalda, do you want to talk about this card about creating a wiki for the knowledge commons?
Yeah, so I think that like your last blog post was cataloging different things happening in the ecosystem, like grant programs or collaborations. So I guess whenever I was thinking of the knowledge commons for ETH Commons, it's kind of like starting to catalog what actually is ETH Commons, whether it's like different smart contracts that a lot of different organizations are using for certain purposes. Just like maybe it can be an entry place for people that might be new dApp developers, and to make sure that they don't like reinvent the wheel. It's like, oh, do this. This person's already working on that, or go collaborate in this working group here. Just starting to make it transparent, like what's going on, different cataloging different open meetings like this, really just having like the calendar there and things like that. So I don't know if that's something that there's GitHub, right? Just like starting to, I don't know if it requires starting like an ETH Commons, like GitHub repo and organization, but if that was done, then we'd need to think through the whole, well, what does it take to be a maintainer and merge code in this wiki, or merge stuff into the wiki thing? So that's where governance of ETH Commons start to actually come into play, though. Or we just do it decentralized, like.
No. Yeah, I think this is a really good point, because I think that there is, I mean, if you think, so my version of this is if you Google something these days, like I Googled something, and then it was some kind of like pop culture thing, and like the top 5 responses were all from different random like media sites that were saying the exact same thing, but just wanted to get the clicks themselves. And like really they're all saying the same thing. So like everybody should just co-evolve for this top one, or maybe 2 at the top, and then everything would have been much better. And I think a similar thing with something like you have all these different beginner's guide to X, beginner's guide, it's like those things exist a lot. And what would be, how can we make it so there's not, 100 of them, but rather it's like, here are the top 3 and we've curated them to some extent or what have you. And that's a good way to get into the ecosystem, and here are the newsletters and stuff like that. So I think that what you're saying is very powerful. And I think that what it needs more than anything is, I think we all kind of sense this, or I personally sense this, is like, it feels like, and Susan and I at least were talking about this, it's like there's a lot of work that ETH Commons could easily do. And I personally am very time constrained. Susan's doing this as a bonus. She has a real job too. And so like, it's, Neil's about to have a kid. So it's just, yeah, so that's my response to that. I think it's very aligned. I think it should happen, and I think that it pretty much just needs the ecosystem to fund people like that, and then for them to do it.
Well, the other thing is, if ETH Commons did the task management in GitHub with the issues, then it's more transparent with the work that does need to be done, right? And then we can use the different bounty tools for that and help push things forward, right? So that's the other idea there. It's like, okay, well, what are all the tasks that need to be done in ETH Commons? Then you can kind of use meetings like this to prioritize them with like Trello or whatever.
What are those bounty tools, Yalda, that you mentioned? Are those built into GitHub, or is that an add-on?
Well, there's Status Open Bounty or Gitcoin. So those are integrations.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So they can like put ETH against the tasks or other tokens.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying, Yalda, as well, around the like how to prioritize these things, is that you have a lot of, the way that I think about this is you have a lot of shared spaces that are Slack channels and Telegram groups and things like that, and people are doing whatever, but there are not very many shared spaces for like Trello boards, shared Trello boards. Like that doesn't happen as much. And I feel like that should be very much part of what's happening now. So yeah, let's actually conform to the process that we have here, and everybody on the right side, they should vote to put a number between 0 and 4 for how much longer you would like to talk about specifically this wiki for the knowledge commons stuff.
Oh.
So you say, how many more minutes would you like to talk about this? And you type it in on the right side with the in the chat. And anybody else just should. Nice work. Thank you, Michael. Okay, let's take one more minute. Michael, you're the one who has the top vote. So let's take one more minute. Why do you want to talk about this? What's on your mind?
Well, I think it's really important. I think Yelda asked a great question. And I think there's different ways we can organize this. I was just going to mention briefly, you mentioned Trello. I think MindNode, I don't know if you've ever heard it or not, but it could be a different alternative way of organizing some of these very similar, but obviously disparate projects. And I also wanted to just throw it out there that I think developing a decentralized reputation system is also key in this. Because earlier we mentioned, who's going to be in charge of approving these merge requests and letting these things in and prioritizing the issues. We can't let it just go willy-nilly. One vote is one vote. I mean, we could, but I think reputation needs to somehow find its way in there. So just wanted to throw that hat in the ring.
One note on the reputation thing is that I think that the reputation stuff is massively crucial. It is, as we transition away from scarce capital, reputation and attention become the next big thing.
Exactly.
And so, it's and it's what we should all be optimizing for, essentially. Is our reputations. Okay, sweet. Let's move on to the next card. How might curation markets be involved? James, do you want to say a little bit on this?
Well, I guess this kind of backtracks to the conversation about hashtags, but I'm just curious to hear from all of you what you think about how curations might be involved in this effort.
I think just maybe similar to what we discussed, like prioritizing issues, like the top things that, maybe top articles to write about, or top development work, or top stuff that should be funded. So people that join the ETH Commons can kind of use, maybe they get a token and that gives them some kind of curation privileges.
Yeah, I'd like to see ETH Commons facilitate and support, experimentation around various curation markets and really do so in a reliable and safe way that is for the common good instead of some kind of scheme. But I'd like to hear what people think, and maybe this is a conversation for another call, but what is the first iteration of like the ETH Commons curation market? Because anyone can use the hashtag, but you're just staking your reputation. Are we thinking about a system that makes that a little bit more, real or actual?
Yeah, I think that is the funny thing with the hashtag is I think this gets to one of those questions here, which is like, when are you even allowed to use the ETH Commons hashtag? Like, it's not like anybody uses the hashtag really. People say things similar, and then I place it on them in a Medium post later, and I say this is exactly what we're talking about. But no one actually uses it, and I think that is. So I think that you're right, James, to bring this up. Though I think that I would be more worried if we had like everybody was using the ETH Commons hashtag and like some random people are just virtue signaling with it. There's no signaling even happening. So that's a.
I used the hashtag, Reese.
Did you?
Yeah, I used it earlier today.
Oh, I have on my tweet deck, I have Biddle as one of my things that I'm always looking for and liking random stuff, and I have ETH Commons, and so I'll check it out. I'll make sure. The other thing I was going to say with this is, I think in the short term we're going to have. The curation is done in the way that newsletter curation is done these days, which is, hey, we trust proof of work, and we trust token economy, and we trust Evan from This Week in Ethereum, and in a similar way, we can trust whatever some random ETH Commons steward who's being peer funded by everybody. So they're like, great, this person's just doing their thing, they're curating, and then eventually we might need to switch over to some of these more these open value network kind of things that Nathan was talking about earlier, where you're based off of the memes that you're spreading and based off of the where I guess the economic, where it's uber permissionless, and where the kind of value transfer and economic incentives are built in a deeper way. I think that's more of a longer term thing. one other thought on top of my mind is like, there's something that I really want with something like EthCommons, which is like this, like I remember I typed like, this was a while ago, but I said like, if I could stake to co as a prefix, just like CO as a prefix, I would. And I really would. Like anybody who is like trying to like embody that, I want more of that to exist in the world. But like, I don't know how any of that, how that would, clearly there's like a whole curation market style thing where that can and will happen in the future. And that's the similar style with like Reddit stuff. But I don't know if there's a way that we all as people can push for this. What I mean by staking to co is a prefix, which prefixes a lot of great things: co-evolving, cooperation, collective, all that kind of stuff. So co as a prefix is a very good prefix. That's what I mean by it. It's a thing that should be used. Codependency, exactly. Okay, so we're gonna go to this final card here because I think this is actually the most interesting one, which is, or not necessarily the most interesting one, but it is one that I think is maybe more confusing now than it was in the past, which is this card around how should the EthCommons co-evolve with ECF consensus, with decentralized space cooperative, with all these things. And it used to be, especially with stuff like when EthCommons quote unquote started 6 months ago, ECF didn't exist, ETHPrize didn't exist, a bunch of these things didn't exist. Now these things are starting to exist, and all these grant programs and bounty programs, and that's good because they are doing the shared goal and the shared outcome that we want. But it's also like, how should this quote unquote entity actually exist or collaborate with those things? So what do people think on this?
Well, isn't it similar to kind of what was we were talking about before with like working in silos and working together? And I think that all those things can exist independently, but at the same time, they need to be connected. And I feel as though it's part of EthCommons' role to maybe not only publicize about it, promote it as that curation happens, that kind of talks about that a little bit, but also how do we get the word out? How do we become that mediator, or how do we create or co-create a world, that we're all trying to do? So I think that it's we're a little bit like the glue, to use a silly term, but
no, I mean other people, wow, everybody loves glue. I was talking with someone else about glue. Who was I talking with? Someone else was like, oh, you are definitely the glue. You are the glue. So I think glue is actually also a good word, because as you can think of it as like, as something like, so if you think about in the past, the infrastructure for like protocol level infrastructure for ETH didn't have as much attention as it does today. Now you have ETH Foundation grants came out, ECF came out with infrastructure grants, ETHPrize has infrastructure grants. That's a lot of infrastructure grants. That's great. That, I feel like, when you think from the perspective of like what is neglected and what is not neglected at any given point in time, that stuff is right now not as neglected as it was. And you have a bunch of people also like the Plasma researchers all co-evolving with each other and getting on a call once every couple weeks to chat about their implementations and co-evolving to their shared goals there. So that's like good. And I think that the glue, the other reason why I kind of like the glue is it fits in the cracks in a way where you say, hey, like at the beginning, it was like people were kind of getting excited about crypto economic primitives, but it was like, yo, people, let's get together. Let's make sure everybody goes to the Gitter for crypto economic primitives. Let's like organize some shared calls for it and kind of kickstart that off the ground. And now Aragon is doing a great thing where they have a token curated registry working group as part of their Aragon Labs program. It's like, okay, so that's being that plus Consensus spun up their own internal kind of crypto economic primitives thing. So I think that that's the other piece I like about the glue, is that we can kind of go to places that we see as currently neglected. We can be more fluid and help those at the beginning. Do others have thoughts on this stuff? Michael, is yours different? Reading it now. Yeah, I think we're kind of honing in on information as well here, and that the curation information piece is kind of crucial. other thoughts that people have around how, and I guess, let me just ask a specific question. So y'all, for someone like you, how would you want ETH Commons to, like, you're into co-ops, you know, but like, how would you want ETH Commons to actually work with or co-evolve with you?
To co-evolve with me?
With not you, but your space co-op.
I mean, as far as like space co-op or space decentral goes, it's like there's still, like, I always say this like this, like, there's still this common IT tools that a lot of organizations need to use regardless of what industry you're in. So that's why I'm very interested in this, because it's just basic things like mentioned, like whether it's identity, task management, reputation systems. So I'm very interested in this because of the application layer and how that is very common across any organization that kind of wants to operate or work in a decentralized manner. So so I think that the more that we can kind of even make the application layer a commons similar to the blockchain layer, the better. So that's what I'm interested in, like, you know, just like token agnostic applications, you know, ones where you can like use your own token plugged into your own governance. So, but well, that's part of the reason why, you know, we're building like a planning application on top of Aragon, is because we're like, okay, well, we don't really need to do a separate ICO to start to build this whole application ecosystem. Let's just kind of build on what is already being developed and then figure out like what's missing, and then figure out how to, you know, fund that, or how we can like co-fund common applications. So that's my interest, is kind of the curate, like the feature, like curating features for applications so we can use them and make the world a better place, like through, whether it's through science or through you know, building new cities on Earth. Like I think that's what I'm interested in. How can we like connect people across the world to collaborate and make that just easy?
Yeah, got it. I think that the thing that you're saying there is pretty key to ETH Commons as a thing, which is the protocol layer is relatively commons and to some extent right now, it has been pushed more commons with all these infrastructure grants. ETH Commons can kind of be the glue further up to say, okay, what are things that are popping up? Decentralized exchanges, crypto economic primitives, things like that, to say, hey, let's make sure that this stuff also has a co-evolution shared outcomes mindset as it starts to occur. So I like that. So we're essentially at time right now. What I would love to do actually in these final, if everybody has 5 more minutes, I just want to go, because I feel like we've done honestly, there's been some good progress here in terms of other interesting memes, like the glue meme to push, I think is powerful. I think that understanding a little bit your guys' perspective on it. I'm going to ask everybody, I'm going to send along a Google form that has some questions that I'm just curious about that I think will be helpful for us going forward as well. And I think that, because in some way I think it's been helpful, but in some ways I think it's just been us just like talking about random crap. So what I would love is for everybody to take I'm essentially, yeah, let's do it like this. So I'm going to point at you and you're going to tell me what you see as like a takeaway or a next step. Okay. So I'm going to start, or let's actually pause for 15 seconds and say, okay, what were the takeaways and or next steps of this thing? And then we're going to go and we're going to try to get these together. So for me, the takeaways are, A, we think that the meme nature of it is powerful. B, that we think that there's room for I think the meme nature is powerful and the permissionlessness, and the glue is very powerful. Those are 2 good takeaways for me for next step. It's sending along that little Google form, and then doing a re-exploration into some of the further like application layer things. So that's what's on my mind. You can also just think of this as a what's on your mind kind of thing. Let's start with Michael, because you were going to type some stuff. What are your takeaways, next steps, or what's on your mind?
Sorry about that. I was going to type them and then I couldn't figure out how to return. I don't really have too much to add, but just I think I'm going to be focusing on reputation and developing systems for reputation interacting with content in a back and forth kind of way rather than a broadcast and just receive kind of way. And I'd love to see how that effort can align with ETH Commons, and looking forward to just having more meetings and kind of getting a better idea of the whole scope of everything. So
cool, thank you. Let's just go to the left, James.
Basically, just excited to see what the collective will create, and the impact it will have on the whole world. So yeah, excited to participate.
Oh, okay. Let's go to Daryl.
Yeah, I'm just hopeful we do try to stay as decentralized as we can, and while there might be a temptation to build something that's centralized first, like maybe it needs to happen, but let's at least have a roadmap to get decentralized.
Well, I like it. Yalda.
Takeaways, maybe instead of doing a GitHub, just a Google Doc. We can start to download our ideas and thoughts, make that open and editable or something to I guess you don't want it to get all spammed, so we can figure out how that works. But maybe we just need like a better place to download our ideas in an asynchronous manner, and then maybe have a regular monthly meeting on the calendar. So then maybe people have more advanced warning, and other people can join it. And whenever the next meeting comes up, we can hashtag it to get more people to join if we want.
Yep. Boom. Cool. Thank you, Susan.
I think the cross project is really my biggest takeaway, because it involves like the collaboration, the glue, all those different things that I think we were talking about. And Yalda, I really like the idea of creating a space that holds all that information too, so people could access it. I really think that that's important.
Cool. Thank you, Susan. Nathan?
I'm just thinking out that the memetic engineering, like memes are powerful. Like reality is memes, everything is memes. And I think that is like a massive kind of, it's something that's accessible to everyone. Like if ETH Commons kind of primarily focuses on like becoming like the meme, the meme creator of the ecosystem, and the meme kind of, it's where the memes kind of get kicked out. Like anyone can create a meme, and anyone can jump in on that process. It's not a technical skill that you need. And yet memes are massively powerful because they quite literally change people's thoughts and behaviors. So that could be a really, really good focus, I think. So yeah, love the glue thing. And I think we could definitely do some amazing stuff in that, because then you're avoiding putting a circle around ETH Commons as well. You're avoiding becoming a product that people, they think, oh, ETH Commons is this product, or ETH Commons is this thing that just funds people. Like ETH Commons can be this like an idea, and you can't kill ideas. And anyone can participate in an idea and generating this kind of growing memetic engineering model.
Yeah, I think that there's so just kind of synthesizing all that stuff, and then we'll wrap up and be done. I think that thinking about what Jim said with Jim, aka James, goes by Jim sometimes too. That's like his thing was very much about just like the ideas and like what will a collective create. And I feel like we should I think that in this connected with the memes thing is like, I think we should just lean deep into the like, hey, this is just a bunch of people who are philosophizing about the deep why behind why we're doing stuff, and to exist at the kind of the information idea philosophy level, and that lots of people are doing the biddle stuff as well, and that's necessary and crucial. But if we are the meme biddlers or just the mind biddlers, then I think that there's something there. The other thing I was going to say, which what Daryl said, which is that it's saying decentralized, where it's like, I think a lot of people, there's this desire, at least I know I have this desire to be like, okay, what is the thing? What are the actions? What are the takeaways? What are the next steps? Let's go, go, go. Let's, complete our roadmap with our OKRs or whatever. I think there's something powerful about, just being like, okay, occasionally stuff comes together. We come and we talk about things, and then, but we're very decentralized. We go and we do our thing again, but there's kind of this kind of making sure we say that we're like at the hyper end of decentralization, I think is good as all of these silos are existing. yeah, so with that, thank you all for coming. I'll send you guys a little form thing, a Google form to fill out for bonus stuff, and I'll let you know if and when, hopefully when, the next ETH Commons thing is. And if you guys have any thoughts or ideas, please definitely send them my way. Seem good? Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good meeting you guys.
Bye.